Good evening and welcome to the Velocity of Now. I'm your host, Thomas Sheridan. It's the 9th of October 2016 and this is the Sunday Sermon edition. My website is www.thomassheridanarts.com and www.streetdruid.net. If you'd like to help or support me in any way, there's links there to my books, especially my new book, The Druid Code, which I think you'll like very much, and probably ties in a little bit with what I'm talking about here on the show this afternoon or this evening, wherever you are in the world. And I've also opened a new YouTube channel called Open Source Occult TV. You've probably already seen the promo anyway, but if you would join that channel and subscribe, I'm going to be making movies, documentaries, and short films, basically done to a higher production level than, say, this or just me talking into a camera, on the occult. But it'll be very unique in the sense that it won't be hysterical. It won't be from a judgment point of view in terms of thinking it's satanic or evil or anything like that. There'll be no buzzwords like Illuminati and things like that. It'll purely just be an adult, mature look at what the occult is, different factors of the occult. And yes, it's real. There's absolutely no doubt about it. The first film I'm currently working on is an occult tour of Dublin, Ireland, my hometown, a city that is full of the occult symbolism. And it'll be the first of many cities I hope to visit, to film and talk about these aspects. Now, they're very, very real, but they're not there because they're, satanic messages from the Illuminati to one another. If you still believe that, you really, after like a couple of years of being so-called awake, you're still falling for the hype. Yes, that's real. Yes, the occult is real. Yes, they do it for magical reasons, but it's not like there's a bunch of like Satanists, reptilians sitting down somewhere on the moon or something planning this. It's an ancient science that basically goes back to creating a perfect society. And so that'll be the first film I hope to produce on it. There'll be an hour-long documentaries. They won't be like broadcast quality, but they'll be good enough for YouTube. And to finally do this topic justice, without the hysteria, without the stupid music and, some kind of voice, the satanic Illuminati. They serve the goddess, not the god. All that crap. So I hope you can join in that and enjoy it, and it should be interesting. Now, since it's Sunday, I suppose we should get a little bit of religious for a change, or a little bit spiritual, whatever that is, and philosophical. I guess the theme of tonight's show, if there is one, is disbelief that has existed probably since the time of the Gnostics. That this earth there's something fundamentally wrong with this reality, this planet, and we must escape it. Now, I know a lot of people in the alternative movement seem to think that the Gnostics are some kind of wonderful group, and although I find them very, very interesting, and I do think a lot of their ideas were valid, they were ultimately a death cult trying to escape this reality. At the end of the day, they were looking for a Jim Jones type solution. They were so traumatized and deeply affected by the Roman system and the classical world system that they really had tremendous difficulty existing, even though they had their attributes. Now, of course, they evolved into groups like the Bogomils eventually. They died off as officially the Gnostics. They were also hunted down brutally because Rome doesn't like you having any god that is in conflict with their system. So they did basically to the Gnostics what they did to the Druids in Britain. And the Gnostics basically, their ideas survived. They fell into Italy, into Spain. They got into the Slavic world. They became the Bogomils of the Bulgaria, the Bulgars. And then their ideas drifted across to southern France, where they probably became central to the Cathars. Well, definitely the Cathars' idea of Christianity was very, very similar to the Cathar idea. Cathars were, of course, exterminated by the Roman Empire for the same reason, although it was called the Catholic Church that time, the Vatican. And then we had a situation where the Gnostics became a kind of a secret society that people whispered in hushed tones. Lewis Spence, in his books on the occult, talks about this, that they were called the Illuminati then. Now I can see all you like Muppets who are still like watching David Icke and Alex Jones going, Illuminati. No. Before the Bavarian Illuminati, which is a very real organization, by the way, and a one with a very clandestine agenda, no problem, no doubt about that. The Illuminati were believed to be the survivors of Gnostic thought. They were whispered in hushed tones. They were considered to be like, they're the ones behind the curtain that can really solve things. Not in a negative way like we do with Freemasons, but in a kind of they were a secret group, and if you wanted secret knowledge, you got in with this Illuminati. Now, eventually, they more or less formed the Grand Orient Lodge in Paris from Spanish and Italian and French, shall we say, Gnostic cults. And that's how that began. And then we know the story that Weishaupt in 1776, he infiltrated them and so on. So, but basically like the Irish Druids anyway, the ones who left the flight of the Earls in 1607 out of Ireland, they basically absorbed themselves into early forms of Freemasonry, and that was the end of that. But the Gnostics, the Freemasons basically became a repository for information and knowledge that was generally either suppressed or not for everybody. When I say not for everybody, probably too dangerous for the average moron to know. And so, I remember like a couple of years ago, there was a guy on my Facebook page who's a member of the Orange Order in Northern Ireland. He's a nice guy too. And he showed the banner before the 12th March in Belfast. He put up a picture of the lodge banner. The Orange Lodges are basically Freemasonic groups. And it was a very beautiful piece of embroidery, I have to say, like so many of these banners. Very, very very nicely done artistically in terms of its, the quality of embroidery. And I mean, I got talking to the guys in the lodge, and they were very nice. And I said to them, well, what does the symbols mean? And they go, well, I can't tell you because you're not in the lodge, Thomas, which is fair enough. And then I said, well, I know what that means. I know what this means. I know what that means. And they were like saying, oh, fair enough. That's pretty interesting that you know. So the attitude is that if you already know it, they won't deny it. If you don't know it, they won't let you have it. So that's basically how it works with this kind of idea. In the technological age, this will continue, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But first, why did such ideas exist? Why do we have this notion of, say, this reality that we're in is broken somehow, or humanity is imperfect, and this need to escape it? Well, I want to read from, and I have to say this, I'm delighted to see that so many of you who buy, when I look at Amazon and I look at my books, and it says people who bought, like my books, also bought. It's great to see you actually buying books that I've recommended. And it really does my heart a lot of good to see that you're actually buying books that I read, and you're buying them yourself to read them. So we're becoming a kind of a, shall we say, a secret college? Well, not so secret college, but one book you should pick up is Robert Wick's biography of Nietzsche. Now, it's not really a biography, it's more of a philosophical treatise on the philosophical, you say, late romanticism, post-existentialism, pre-existentialism ideas of Nietzsche, and it puts Nietzsche's ideas into a very accessible format. He's a New Zealand guy. Now, I want to read from it, which will segue us into the rest of the show. And it begins here. It's a quote from Nietzsche himself, the heaviest weight. What if someday or night a demon were to crawl after you into your lonely loneliness and say to you, this life, as you live it now and have lived it, you will live again and innumerable times once more, and there will be nothing new in it, but rather every pain and every pleasure and every thought and every sigh and everything unspeakably small or great within it must come back to you, and everything in the same order and succession, even this spider in this moonlight between the trees, and even the moment and I myself, the eternal hourglass of existence is turned over and over again forever, and you along with it, speck of dust. And then Nietzsche replies, would you not throw yourself down, gnash your teeth, and curse the demon who spoke in this way? Or have you once experienced a colossal moment where you would have answered him, you are a god, and I have never heard anything more godlike? If this thought was to take control of you, it would transform you as you are, or perhaps chew you to bits. The question in each and everything is, do you want this again, or even countless times again? Would you lay upon your actions as the heaviest weight? Or how positive must one's attitude be towards oneself and towards life in order to want nothing more than this final eternal confirmation and seal? And going back now to, well, adding Robert Wicks's comment on that Nietzsche quote, 2 centuries before Nietzsche lived, René Descartes grounded his philosophy on the thought experiment comparable to the one above. Like Nietzsche, Descartes postulated an evil demon who, one, was so powerful that he could make Descartes unsure of almost every thought he ever had, including apparent inductibility such as 2 + 2 = 4. With some further reflection on Descartes' part, the demon soon dissolved and transformed, but Descartes encountered in his mind the idea of a benevolent God, and that had been waiting for him to be discovered, like a stamp of an artisan upon his product. Both Descartes and Nietzsche's philosophies locate us initially in the realm of the demonic, and they eventually bring us into contact with the divine. Both philosophers moved their readers from heaven to hell, from dark night of the soul to a vision of the divine, although their respective conceptions of these opposing realms radically different. Descartes believed that a divine realm exists beyond the world we live in. Nietzsche believed that hell and heaven are alternative interpretations of our ever-present world, depending upon whether one is weak-minded or strong-minded. Nietzsche's doctrine of eternal recurrence is an existentialist doctrine. It is a doctrine which, if affirmed, intends to bring a person's attitude down to earth and render it more realistic. It can be regarded also as a direct attack on the belief of the otherworldly God, a belief which allegedly directs a person's significance towards a world beyond the present one, and which focuses one's attention and ultimate meaning in a world more perfect, moral, and tranquil than the one we happen to have. For Nietzsche, the belief is such an other world is a life-sapping illusion that leads us quickly to forget that we are, at this very moment, alive, and he prescribes the most disworldly view he can imagine as a psychological countermeasurement. In his later years, Nietzsche spoke disparagingly of those who lacked the attitude appropriate to this affirmation of eternal recurrence, those whom he perceived everywhere around him, referring to them as failures from the start, and ascribing to them an array of distasteful sentiments. Now, what Nietzsche is implying here is that if you have the idea of something is better than what we have now, you're losing the flavor of the moment. So if let's imagine you're waiting for a beautiful 3-course meal, and the final part of the meal is the dessert, and you're only focused on the dessert, and you're rushing to get to that dessert. You're missing out on savoring the full flavors and the pleasures of the starter course and the main course. And this is Nietzsche's underlying philosophy of eternal recurrence, is that if there was nothing else other than this life lived over and over and over again, would you live it better and savor the experiences more greatly? And I think there's a lot to that. There's a lot to the idea that you're robbed of the dynamics of life by expecting something better than this. Now, of course, in the past, life was far more brutal and difficult than it is now. So if you were in the Middle Ages, a serf in France or England or anywhere like that, and you were basically your life was actually no better than a livestock animal. You lived in poverty, sickness, disease. You had things like the Black Death. You were worked half the death in the fields by either the baron, the lord, or the monks. You would want to believe that there was a salvation beyond this. And this is a natural function. But what causes a person who has everything they want to believe there's something wrong with this reality when they've done very well from it? For example, Bill Gates and Elon Musk both have won the game here, but yet both seem to believe that this is still a problem. Even though they've won the game, they're still under the illusion that the game is fixed. Now, returning back to David Wicks again, to understand the psychology of the Nietzschean superhuman personality, we can recall one of the most basic themes in Nietzsche's thought, namely the question of whether or not life is worth living. Nietzsche's resounding yes to the question is formulated in a battling reaction to the acknowledged tragedy of life, and this Nietzschean problematic can be traced in part to his reflection on the tragedy of Oedipus. Specifically, Nietzsche's notes in The Birth of Tragedy that in Sophocles' Oedipus at Colonus, the Greek god Silenus presents King Midas with a state of nihilism. It is best for people not to be born, that the second best for them to die soon, presumably because the world is too hellish and disappointing to make the effort worthwhile. In his crusade against nihilism, Nietzsche can be seen as an aspiring King Midas, or a medieval alchemist who tries to turn into gold even the lead weight of his disparaging, miserable existence. And then I was reading that this week, and that's Nietzsche by David Wicks. So that's another book you can add to your collection. And thank you for doing this with me and buying the books I select, because it's important that we understand each other and we have similar. The show's better for you, the show's better for me, it's a better experience for you. It also gives you the tools to, if you want to, contradict me or disagree with me. And that's all. It's always very healthy to do this. And we should support authors who actually produce good work. Now, what brings me to this is that this week, and you probably know about this story anyway, but this is all perfectly summed up in a story in the Washington Post from 2017 that has also resurged again in a different format. But I want to go back to the original one. And it says, Elon Musk is Neo from the Matrix? ? His cousin explains. Elon Musk is a magnet for accolades. With all the high praise from the Tesla and the SpaceX chief executive, it can blur together to become trite. But one of the more interesting appraisals of Musk comes from his cousin, Lyndon R. Reeve, who is the chief executive of Solar City. Musk is the chairman of Solar City board and the largest shareholder. You see how they are? They give this, even when they have their technical empires, it's still full of nepotism. They still look after their own family. These are the technological kings in service of the bio digital redeemer. I did show on that a while ago. Reeve was in Washington Friday for the Bloomberg of the Year award conference, and he explained to me why he had made a habit of comparing Musk to Keanu Reeves' character. If you've not seen The Matrix, watch The Matrix. Elon is Neo. He sees these zeros and worlds. He just has a different look at the entire world. And he has this rare gift where he's super intelligent when it comes to engineering and to learning complexity and challenges. But he also understands business and consumer needs. And that is very rare. Often you have a crazy scientist who doesn't understand business, and sometimes they may understand business, but they don't understand the consumer and the importance of the customer service, making sure the product is perfect, just everything about delivering a great service to the consumer. Elon has an appreciation of the entire scope. When you have that type of appreciation, you really can do amazing things, which is what he's doing. He's going to colonize Mars before we die. He created a car company in the US where everyone thought it would fail. He's the largest shareholder of Solar City. He's creating a new energy company. He's truly an individual person. To do what Elon does requires massive sacrifice, like a massive, massive personal sacrifice of time. He's willing to make humanity a better place, so it tears him if he's not working. He's not accelerating the outcome. So he makes a massive personal sacrifice. He works 90 hours a week. Every single week he's already working to make the world a better place. And that comes at a toll. He's willing to make that sacrifice because he's so smart and no one else can do it, so he has to do it. Now, apart from the cultish ramifications of talking about Elon Musk like this, what Elon Musk is doing is not working to make the world a better place. He's working to survive debt. And this is a common thing with a lot of these technotypes. They've done very well. They've made tons of money. They've become extremely successful. But they know they can't take it with them. I saw another thing this week with Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, where him and two other soulless dregs from Facebook, typical Silicon Valley types who go to Burning Man, and they had this virtual reality 3D. We're back to that stupid thing where you put the helmet on your head, and it was still ridiculous. It was still an idealized, childlike cartoon world. Again, these people fundamentally, what's wrong with them? Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Bill Gates, and Steve Jobs, is that they don't really feel human. They don't. They feel the same way the Gnostics felt. Now, before you go on about the Gnostics were spiritual, the Gnostics used the technology of the time to try and escape their matrix, which was spirituality. If the Gnostics were around today, they would be people like these. They would be Silicon Valley techs. I know that may sound weird to you or strange, but believe me, the technology is just like magic. It's the same thing. People who have this desire to escape this reality will seek it out, whether it's a cult that's going to move them into the fifth density before the comet clusters come along, or it's something like a spaceship is going to select them and bring them up, or it's something that's going to be a great awakening. It's the same type. Now, the more ones with more power and education knows these things are not going to happen, and they may be aware of ideas like Nietzsche's eternal recurrence. However, they will use their money to try and transcend mortality. This is what they're really worried about. The biggest problem for them with this reality is the problem of mortality. This is a huge problem for these people. An enormous problem for them. They do not want to believe that the world will go on without them. And this is why someone like Elon Musk and Bill Gates think that the world cannot survive without them, because they see humanity as little more than a laboratory they're playing with. Now, from this Breitbart Tech page, I don't know how good this website is, but I thought this was still a good article. Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk claimed that there is only a one in a billion chance we are not living in a Matrix-style computer simulation. You see, he's now a Gnostic. This is Gnosticism 101. Just because that's not spiritual doesn't mean it's not echoing the same ideas. You have to get this thing out of your head that somehow spiritual is better. Spiritual is just different. It's a different approach, like a different. There's no difference between if I go into art and I want to be a sculptor. If someone goes to art to be a painter. Someone goes to art to be a poet. It's still the same thing. It's still art. It's just a different medium. Well, these people are still the same thing. They're trying to escape this reality with a different medium. One is spirituality. One is techno. The strongest argument for us being a simulation probably one the following. 40 years ago, we had Pong, like two rectangles and a dot. That was the game. That was what the games were, said Musk. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations and millions of people playing simultaneously. And it's getting better every year. Soon we'll have a virtual reality and augmented reality. If you assume any rate of improvement of all, then all games will become indistinguishable from reality. Even at that rate of advancement drops by 1,000 from what it is now. Then you say, okay, let's imagine it's 10,000 years in the future, which is nothing on an evolutionary scale. So given that we are clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, and those games can be played on any set-top box or PC or whatever, there would probably be billions of such computers or set-top boxes. It would seem to follow the odds that we are in a base reality is one in a billion. Tell me what's wrong with the argument, asked Musk. So, the answer is yes. Asked a member of the audience in reference to reality being an artificial simulation. The argument is probably, is there a flaw in the argument, he replied. Musk continued to argue that it would be a good thing if we were living in a simulation, claiming that if we weren't, a calamitous event would wipe out humanity and stop it from advancing. Aha, now you see the fear of mortality sneaking in here. And also, did you see the thing where he said, tell me what's wrong with the argument? Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with the argument. You don't know it for a fact, okay? And also by using phrases like tell me what's wrong with the argument, he's making a supposition that he's automatically correct and you're wrong. Now that's okay. We probably are living in kind of nature of virtual reality. But let me tell you something. I actually believe it's more spiritual not to try and escape it. And I think a lot of people do as well, because there's no growth in it. It runs away from a problem rather than learn to engage with it and accept it and, thrive, shall we say the word. This is what the Venus Project and all this stuff is about. It's all about trying to escape being human, because the people who are the most caught up in it have the biggest fear of their own humanity. This is going back to Musk. Arguably, we should hope that it's true, because otherwise, if civilization stops advancing, then we may be due to some calamitous event will erase civilization, he argued. So maybe we should be hopeful that this is a simulation, because otherwise either we are going to create simulations indistinguishable from reality, or civilizations will cease to exist. There are two options. Now you see, this is just like the Gnostics. The Gnostics had this thing that this reality was a kind of a prison. Well, the planet was a kind of a prison, and we were held in place by the archons. Now the archons are not, demons or jinns or anything like that. This is a thing that came up later through New Age groups. The archons to them were the bureaucrats, the people like Elon Musk. So it's almost like a self-defeating argument. Here's Elon Musk saying that digital reality will replace this reality, but if anything happened in this reality, it would continue on in virtual reality. This is, again, he's trying to not die. That's all this comes down to. He's trying to not die. And why is that? Because this guy is working 90 hours a week. He's doing everything by the book. He's celebrated. He's made billions of dollars. He's a successful business person. But guess what? It's not enough. It's not enough. He's had his first course, his main course, and his dessert. And he's going, what next? And what he hasn't understood properly is that instead of feeling the sense of emptiness, that his next meal, he must learn to savor it better. He must learn to understand all. You see, one of the problems is they want the entire fabric of existence complete, but they're not interested in understanding each and every individual stitch. So this is why we go back. Like, this is one of the reasons why I think European traditional culture is so wonderful. Is that we take things like cooking food, brewing beer, tending the land, and the Japanese on this too, as the Indians, to an art form. You go to like a Mediterranean country, they don't shove food down on their throats. They turn it into an art form where every fork or spoonful is savoured, even though they may be eating the same thing every day. They have perfected within the limitations of the agricultural projects available to them, which in the Mediterranean countries is far better than, say, Northern Europe. Now, the Northern Europeans can't do this. They have to work a lot harder. They have to store food for the winter. Traditionally, I'm talking about now, store fuel for the winter. They'll be indoors a lot of the time during the winter. So what they did is they compensated for this by savouring their internal world. And this is where all the stories and the mythologies came from. The long winter nights indoors where it was too cold to go outside. That's what they savoured, those moments. And they built up the great stories and legends of the Icelandic sagas and so on. And that's what humans have a great ability to do, is to take the present and to make it spectacular. People like Elon Musk don't understand that. And this is what Nietzsche was saying with his eternal recurrence idea. That if you were given the chance to live this life over and over again, and there could be something to that. Maybe that's what deja vu is. We're living our lives over and over again. We just remember it as our last life. Who knows? But if you're given it over and over again, knowing that there was no outcome, no salvation, things would be what they were, then you would learn to understand the meaning of every single individual moment of existence. The pain, the suffering, the happiness, the joy, the love, and the heartache. And suddenly, rather than them becoming events in your life, they become experiences in your life. And when they become experiences, what they become is almost a form of spiritualism in of themselves. So when he mentions the story of the demon, and both Descartes of Descartes, however you want to pronounce it, and Nietzsche bring up the story of the demon is a very important factor in all this. Elon Musk hasn't encountered his demon yet. You see, he's under the assumption that if we make video games and virtual reality indistinguishable from this reality, that it's only going to be a good thing. That if we have endless technological progression, it's only going to be a good thing. He has not seen the demon in his model of the universe yet. And there's the rub. He has not seen the demon in it. And I don't think anyone in the high-tech Silicon Valley world has actually seen the demons yet. And this is, for all that they talk about atheism and all this kind of things, why I think they're all into things like Birdman. They're trying to create that demon. Everything that's flawed or missing within a individual or a social model of the universe, there will be an attempt to try and compensate for it in that model. This is why the greatest wish you can ever have in this life is to be born wealthy. Because if you're born wealthy, you appreciate nothing. You appreciate nothing. And if you're born poor, and it sucks too. But if you're born poor and you make it to the top financially, you're more likely to appreciate that success and enjoy your life better, especially if you've done it through your creativity. Now, the demon in your program was what? Your initial poverty. That was your initial demon. I remember reading Michael Caine's biography back in the early 90s, What's It All About? A very good celebrity biography. And he was saying that he was driven, up until he was probably in his 30s, by the terror of going back to the poverty of his life in the East End of London. And for him, the demon takes on an archetypal form. And the demon for him was that his family was so poor. There was two events in his life. His family was so poor that his father used to get fish. And the fish was kept in his bedroom, herring. And one night he woke up and saw this incredible light in his bedroom that terrified him. He thought it was a ghost. And what it was that herring have a bioluminescence in them. In their skin, they're bioluminescent and produce light. And the herring on in his bedroom were lighting up the room. And that was the demon that shocked him out of poverty later on. He wanted him to become a film star and have lots of money. And the middle one was his father died. All the nurse ran him in the hospital and said, "Here's your father's money that was in your father's pocket." And for a life of working his bollocks off in the docks in London, all Michael Caine's father had in his pocket was 2 shillings and a few pennies. That was his entire life's worth. And that was the demon that drove Michael Caine not to be like that. But Elon Musk is not driven by a demon like that. What he's driven by is the idea of infinite success. Infinite technological success, infinite biological success, and infinite financial success. But that's driven by ambition. And ambition is not the same thing as being driven by that demon. And so what he's doing is he's creating a demon for all of us to live in. He wants to make the world in his image because he's now starting to see himself as God. Like Zuckerberg, they've never had any real hardship in their lives, especially Gates. He came from affluence. They've never had that demon knock on the door. And therefore, they've never had the ability to strive against it. But there's only one demon that bothers them, and that's their own mortality. They're terrified of dying. And so they'll try and preempt the age of death by indulging in this idea of transhumanism, posthumanism, virtual reality of the future. the same thing with like Iman Fresco and the Venus Project. He wants to create these human beings that damage the world a mess at this point. But now, and then you say, oh, the world's a mess. Look at the war, all this kind of thing. And I say, well, yeah, that's true. But here's my philosophy. Here's Sheridan's philosophy, right? This planet is perfect. This planet, in all its beauty and its brutality, from a flower blooming and producing the most beautiful coloured petals and fragrance, to animals tearing themselves asunder for food and survival, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. The only thing that's wrong is not the reality, it's our engagement with it. It's our attitude towards it. Both the shadow and both the light are equally valid. You stand in your garden, beneath your feet, there is absolute carnage. You may think it's a peaceful summer day. Under your feet, there are a billion life forms murdering, eating, consuming, and slaughtering each other. And you think you're having a peaceful day in the countryside. You are having a peaceful day in the countryside because you're not down there with them. That's the only reason for you. So because of your size, your height, your detachment from it, your nice expensive Nike shoes, you're not down there among all the savagery and the butchering. So it's a peaceful day for you. Let's extrapolate this idea further. One of the greatest black magic things that are played upon us is to have us worried about things we can't change. For instance, if there's a war in the Middle East and you're sitting in America or England or Canada or Australia, what can you do about it? Nothing. So why are you angry about it? Why are you devoting the necessary energy? You should be thankful you're not there and enjoy your life here. This is the magic of that moment, of that kind of realization. So you have all these people in the West, and they're all upset about Gaza. Nothing you can do about it. Nothing at all. They're upset about Syria. What can you do about it? Nothing at all. I saw that in Live Aid. I remember watching Live Aid and thinking about. I remember they had one of the concerts in JFK Stadium in Philadelphia, and I was reading the newspaper the next day, and some girl had said in the paper, "I don't care about Africa. I'm only here to have a good time." I remember at the time being shocked by that. And then as the year grew by, I said, "Yeah, she's right. She's not being unempathic, because she doesn't know what she can do except have a good time. What good does sit there fretting about Africa do for anyone except geld off? It doesn't do anything. They want money. They want you to do. This is the saga. If you're not in that world, be thankful you're not and enjoy it. Just be like you be thankful you didn't live through the Middle Ages during the Black Death. Savor every mouthful. Change your vantage point. And your vantage point is how you feel about it. This is why we have people longing for salvation. Elon Musk is trying to build his own salvation through a 3D reality. Others want Christian salvation. Others are waiting for a great awakening where the 100 monkeys, which never existed, get off their knees. This kind of thing. And all the while, they're robbing themselves of the beauty of life right here and now. And you say, oh, well, my life sucks. Okay, but it could be a lot worse. Oh, I suffer from depression. Well, then they're only happy to want you kill yourself. I saw a friend the other day up in Northern Ireland. He said he went to see the doctor. And in the doctor's office, there's all, they have all the leaflets telling about what your blood pressure and all this kind of thing. He said there were 5 leaflets he counted about suicide, including one about what to do if a family member has committed suicide. And then he said to me, it just dawned on me, they want us to kill ourselves. And I said, well, you've woken up, well done. Of course they want us to kill ourselves. It's retroactive birth control. So what does suicide awareness do?
There isn't one teenage boy who's going to not commit suicide if he wants to commit suicide by suicide awareness. He's going to do it anyway. Just like cancer awareness doesn't save lives. Just like Gaza awareness is not going to help anyone there, and you can do shit about it. And all this stuff. The only people who have you thinking that you should be caring and having awareness are the panhandlers and middlemen in this part of the world who can hustle a few shekels off you, a few quid off you, a few shillings off you, believing that you can absolve your guilt. God, what for you? You shouldn't be guilty. It's not my fault. It's not your fault there's a war in Syria. And don't say this thing like, well, we're bombing them. I'm not bombing them. Are you bombing them? What bomber were you in? You were over there bombing them? Really? You see how they have you brainwashed? That's what they do to you. And so, you've got to get out of this. You've got to get out of this mentality. That doesn't mean you shouldn't care. You can care, but you can do nothing about it. I mean, that's why one of the most important things you do is switch off your TV. I mean, you see things like Comic Relief on the BBC. Every year you have this thing called Comic Relief. And they wheel out all the celebrities on the BBC to tell us about how, your money can build a school in Africa. I don't care. And they'll have no talents like Lenny Henry on the side of a hill. And, it's sort of like this self-conscious expression of torment on his face. What we can do, what can we do to help these people? If you give money, here's what you can do. Turn off the fucking TV, ignore Lenny Henry, and enjoy your life. You are under no obligation to keep this talented cocksucker on TV who never had any talent to begin with. How about that? That's the only reason it exists, to keep people like him from vanishing into obscurity or going back down to the bus station to suck cocks. That's all that's about. You cannot help anyone else, and there is no salvation, except helping the ones that you love and yourself and the ones closest to you, and saving or savoring yourself and your own experience in this reality. And that's what Nietzsche is trying to tell us. That's what Nietzsche is trying to tell us. We've been led, a lot of this was created by religion, particularly the Catholic Church and missionaries and all this kind of thing. And socialists and other groups loved it, because if you're worried about what's going on overseas, you're not going to be caring about what's going on in your own country, your own neighbour, your own community. Because your vantage point has been changed. You're set the sex there on, you don't see all the animals and insects below your feet tearing you to pieces, because your vantage point is different. You're above all that. Well, they do the same thing with having you worried about stuff overseas. You don't notice the old lady down the street starving. You don't notice the people down the road who just need someone to knock on the door to see if they're okay. You don't help the homeless in your own neighbourhood. You give it to a charity. This is what they've done to us. So, as this Sunday progresses, after you listen to this show, think to yourself, if you were told that there was nothing else other than this life, and you had to live it over and over again, and all the stuff that's been good and bad. Now, bear in mind that you might only be 30 or 20 or 50 or 60, so you still have life ahead of you. But just bear what you know so far. And that kept on going over and over again. Would you change your vantage point regarding it? Think about it. You would actually learn from each time around that you're approaching a kind of a godlike status yourself. And in a classic Nietzschean idea of taking the hellish and turning it into salvation. Taking the darkness and finding a meaning in it. So that's this week's show. I hope that's given you food for thought. Realize that what these people are up to with virtual reality is all they're doing is they're putting their phobias about their own mortality on the line and trying to buy their way out of it with their own money. You can't do that, so it's not there for you. And so consider yourself lucky And instead of saying, "Oh, you're talking about the matrix, oh, he's right, the matrix," forget about the matrix. Forget about it. That's just your job is to live a magical life in this reality, a magical creative life, and to savor every single moment. So think about the cultures in the Mediterranean who make every forkful of food a symphony of tastes, and think about the cultures in the northern parts of the world who make every dark, depressing winter's day a world of imagination and deep interest. And then you will know the purpose of this life. So maybe the Gnostics are not so cool after all. Maybe they've set a bad example for the rest of us in some ways, because ultimately they never got off this planet. They did. And that should be a lesson for you too, and especially people like Elon Musk. Have a nice day, and fuck him if they can't take a joke.